Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, we have got, thank you. We have got a hell of a crowd here in the state of Pennsylvania, and in 38 days, we're going to turn Pennsylvania red, send Kamala Harris back in, and send Donald Trump back to the White House. Now, let me say a few notes of appreciation. First of all, to my lovely wife, Usha. Thank you so much, honey, for letting me do this. I don't know why you put up with me, but there's no turning back now. I want to thank the great Congressman, Dan Muser. Where's Dan at? Thank you, Dan. We got Congressman Lloyd Smucker. Lloyd, thank you so much for being here and serving the people of Pennsylvania. We got State GOP Chairman Lawrence Thomas. Lawrence, say hello. And of course, we've got the owner of the Newtown Athletic Club and one of the MVPs of the Trump campaign, Jim Worthington. Thank you, Jim. Now look, I don't know if you guys saw, but a couple of days ago, for the first time, Kamala Harris sat down for an interview with a national audience. That was amazing. It was the person that she sat down with, of course, had already endorsed Kamala Harris. So I don't know if that counts as much of an interview. But, you know, it drove home just how completely without substance Kamala Harris is. You know, she gives an interview and they'll ask her, what is your specific plan for cutting down on the inflation that your policies caused? And she'll say, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. Did you know that? They'll say, Kamala, the world's at war. We've got a war in Asia. We've got a war in Europe. We've got another war threatening in East Asia. What is your plan to bring back stability to the world? That's exactly right. No war was with Trump. What's your plan? What's your plan to follow suit, Kamala Harris? And she'll say, well, when I worked at McDonald's, I was good at making the hash brown. And you realize the problem with Kamala Harris is that she's got no substance. The problem with Kamala Harris is that she's got no plan. And the problem with Kamala Harris is that she has been the vice president for 3.5 years and has failed this country. Let's send her back to San Francisco where she belongs and put Donald Trump back in the White House. Now, you know, I came to Pennsylvania. I wanted to come in the same week that President Zelensky from Ukraine came to Pennsylvania. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but he came to campaign with the Democratic leadership of this country. You know, we've spent $200 billion on Ukraine. You know what I wish Zelensky would do when he comes to the United States of America? Say thank you to the people of Pennsylvania and everybody else. Now, you heard somebody back here say it, but I'm going to repeat it. But Donald Trump was the candidate of peace, the candidate who brought stability to the world for the first time. Really, in my lifetime, we didn't have a new war started under an American president for the first time in 40 years. And of course, the supporters of Kamala Harris say that Donald Trump was not the candidate of peace, and we know that he was the candidate of peace. He was the candidate of prosperity. He was the candidate of American citizenry and putting them first. Now, here's the thing. We have so many problems right now in the United States of America, but we got a lot to be thankful for. We got the most beautiful country in the entire world. I really do believe that. We've got natural resources, including right here in the state of Pennsylvania, great natural gas. Let's get it out of the ground with Pennsylvania workers. When Donald Trump is president, we are going to drill, baby, drill, and bring back the great American energy economy. And Kamala Harris, she is the candidate of not buying oil and gas from Americans and Pennsylvanians. Kamala Harris wants us to buy energy from every tin pot dictator all over the world. Kamala, we say, no way, we're going to buy it from our own people right here in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, here, let's just run through the Kamala Harris economic record. And I'm going to try not to depress everybody too much because Kamala Harris's economic record is depressing, my friends. We've got inflation at 40-year highs. We've got groceries that are 25% higher than Kamala Harris when she took office. And that's because Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote on almost $4 trillion of new spending, printing money that we don't have to juice inflation and destroy the middle class in the state of Pennsylvania. Thanks to Kamala Harris, eggs are about 115% higher. That's more than double the price than when she took office. And I got 3 little kids, my friends. We buy a lot of eggs. So I'm pretty pissed off at Kamala Harris over the price of eggs. When Kamala Harris took office, since then, 3.5 years, gas prices have gone up 35%. Energy has gone up 40%. And it's not just Kamala Harris's terrible economy, of course. It is the wide open southern border. The border czar caused it, and we can't let him forget it. That's exactly right. It is an invasion of this country, and we can't let folks forget that it is deeply connected to what's going on when it comes to the economy. What's going on at the border is deeply connected to what's going on. Now, think about this. When you let in 25 million people, many of whom are bringing fentanyl into this country, and they're competing against Americans buying homes that ought by right go to American citizens, that is why we have skyrocketing housing costs in the state of Pennsylvania and all across our country. So here's our message to Kamala Harris and the 25 million illegal aliens she has let park in the United States of America. In 6 months, pack your bags because you're going home. That's right. We're going to build the wall. We're going to re-implement deportations, and we're going to go to war against the Mexican drug cartels. No more bringing this poison into our country. They got to get the hell out. Now, it is funny to me because Kamala Harris, she doesn't have an ounce of proposal or an ounce of plan. Now, I've only been in politics a couple of years, so maybe, my friends, I'm just not shameless enough to stand before a crowd and do what Kamala Harris does. Because she has been the vice president for 3.5 years. And she'll say to a crowd without an ounce of humility or shame, on day one, we're going to tackle the wide open southern border. On day one, she'll say, we're going to make groceries and housing more affordable for American citizens. Well, Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing? Stop talking about what you're going to do and go and do it. Now, I think that the thing that Kamala Harris and the Democrats say that bothers me the most is when they talk about how they allegedly stand for working people in the middle class. We know that's not true, right? If she stood for the middle class, why did she suspend deportations and open up the American southern border? If she stands for the middle class, why did she fire thousands and hundreds of thousands of people for refusing to take the COVID vaccine a few years ago? If she stands for the middle class, why does she want to tax the middle class in this country to give rich people money to buy electric vehicles made in China? That doesn't make any sense, does it? If she stood for the middle class, why is she trying to destroy the Pennsylvania energy industry? If you stand for the middle class, unleash Pennsylvania energy workers. Let's do it for our own people and our own citizens. Now, it's funny, I will say this, she recognizes how unpopular her actual governance is. She recognizes how unpopular her record is, so she's running away from it every chance she gets. Now, she's on camera saying she wanted to ban fracking, but now she says, oh, I didn't mean it. She's on camera saying that she wanted to give illegal aliens Medicare, which would bankrupt that program, but now she says, no, I didn't mean it. Kamala Harris said on tape that she wanted to ban all private health insurance, but now she says, no, I take that back. And of course she said she wanted to defund the police, but that too, she now pretends she didn't actually believe. You know, Kamala, if you support fracking, if you support the police, if you support lower prices, and you want to close down the southern border, you're welcome to endorse Donald J. Trump. All of us have done it, and you're welcome to join the team. Now, I actually joke with the president. I say, sir, she is copying every single one of your positions. She's not doing it, to be clear. She's not actually governing that way. But I say, sir, she is so obsessed with pretending that she agrees with you on all these issues, I think she's going to show up to her next rally with a red MAGA hat. She's going to steal one of your hats back there. Because here's the thing, Kamala Harris recognizes the American people have common sense. Kamala Harris recognizes the people of Pennsylvania have common sense, and she is lying because she recognizes that people of common sense are going to reject Kamala Harris and her failed policies and her failed governance, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it together. Now, look, part of the reason I think that Kamala Harris it's so disgraceful when they say that their policies work for the middle class, and part of the reason I get so frustrated by that is because I grew up in a family that was affected by the kind of failed policies enacted by Kamala Harris. Now, I remember when my grandmother and I were really tight with money. We didn't have a whole lot extra to spend, and it got very cold in the middle of a cold Ohio winter, and my grandmother would say, you know, we just don't have enough money to turn on the heat tonight. And I think about a lot of Pennsylvania families out there who are going to go through a cold winter in a couple of months. And I happen to believe whether you're rich or poor, if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to turn your heat on in the middle of a cold winter night. I remember when my grandmother would negotiate with somebody from Meals on Wheels to try to get a little bit of extra food so that she could share it with me. And I happen to believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family, but a lot of families can't. But a lot of families can't because of the policies of Kamala Harris. And I happen to believe that whether you're rich or poor, the sacred right of every American citizen, and most importantly, every American child, is to grow up in security and safety in their own neighborhoods, which means kicking out the illegal aliens and kicking out the drug dealers that have made our streets less safe. Now, y'all remember, there was a woman who spoke at the RNC. It was the speech that affected me the most personally, I think because, a lot of folks in my family struggled with addiction when I was growing up, and I know what toll it takes on a family. And this woman was talking about her 15-year-old son who had died of a fentanyl overdose. And what had happened is that this boy had done what a lot of teenagers in our country do. He had taken something under peer pressure, and it happened to be laced with fentanyl that these drug cartels are bringing into our country. And so what for generations of Americans was a teenage mistake is something that took this poor boy's life. And as the father of a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, my friends, I want to raise my children in a country that is safe enough for kids to make mistakes and learn from them rather than those mistakes claiming their lives. I want to raise my children in a country where it's safe enough where whether you're rich or poor, you can walk down the street in safety and comfort, and that is the birthright of every American citizen. I want to raise my children in a country where everybody who works hard and plays by the rules can afford a nice meal for their families and for their children. And because of that, I want to raise my children in a country governed by President Donald J. Trump, not the fraud Kamala Harris. Because here's the thing about Kamala Harris. It's not just that she has bad ideas on public policy, though she does. It's that she disrespects the citizens of her own country and tells them that they're bad people for daring to have an opinion on her failure in leadership. Now you gotta listen carefully sometimes to see it, but sometimes they are as loud and outspoken about it as they could be. Because as a lot of Americans have woken up to the terrible crisis at the American southern border, do we know what the Kamala Harris campaign is out there talking about? Not that Kamala Harris is going to do her job and secure the southern border, but that the people who are complaining about that wide open border, that they are racist. That's what Kamala Harris has been saying. You notice that? Now here's what I think, Kamala Harris. I think that the American citizens, as the First Amendment right, they have the right to complain about your bad leadership. We are not bad people, my friends, for thinking that Kamala Harris is doing a bad job. No one is a bad person for thinking that Kamala Harris should have done her job and shut down the American southern border. No one is a bad person for being pissed off that somebody in their community died of a fentanyl overdose when that poison should have never been here to begin with. Nobody is a bad person for thinking that Kamala Harris ought to do her damn job. Kamala Harris, stop telling the people of your own country that they're bad people. You're a bad person for not doing your job. Start doing it. Because here's the thing about censorship. It is antithetical to the principles of this country. And whether I agree or disagree, if you're watching this on TV or if you're here in the room, whether I agree or disagree with you about a specific issue, I will defend your right to speak your mind in the United States of America. And we ought to talk about the fact that we've got a great combination of Democrats, Republicans, and independents that are behind Donald J. Trump for president. And I think the number one reason is people in this country are sick of being told what to think by their leadership. They're sick of being censored by their leadership. This is America. We get to speak our mind because that's what the founding fathers fought and died for. And think about this, my friends. Why is it that Kamala Harris wants to work with big tech to censor American citizens? Why is it that Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard have endorsed Donald J. Trump for president? They were Democrats just a few years ago. Now, I grew up in a family. My grandparents, the grandparents who raised me, were classic old school Democrats. They believed that Democrats were the party of working people. But now the Democrats are the party of Wall Street, the party of big tech, and the party of censorship. And Americans, we are going to reject it, and it's going to start right here in the state of Pennsylvania. And I think to all those Democrats who are watching who are saying, you know what, we believe in policies that support working people. We don't support policies that put transgender ideas in our schools. There are a lot of Democrats out there who say, you know what, I might not agree on every issue. I might not agree with them on tax policy, for example, but I sure as hell think we ought to close down that southern border and stop the cartels from bringing this crap into our country, right? There are a lot of Democrats out there who want an American economy where normal people can afford to buy food and housing. And to those Democrats, I say, you are welcome on the Trump-Vance team. Come on over to the side of common sense. Because if anything is true about Kamala Harris, she is the candidate of uncommon sense. She is the candidate where she's going to take every crazy idea and turn them into the policies of the United States government. We've seen it in action for the last 3.5 years. Now, you have to remember, Bill Clinton, I didn't agree with Bill Clinton on a lot of issues, but Bill Clinton at least believed that we ought to have a secure southern border. Kamala Harris had opened it, right? Democrats 20, 30 years ago, at least in leadership, they believed that we ought to have some common sense economic policies that lower inflation. Now, Democrats in leadership, Kamala Harris has cast that to the side. We believe that we ought to have schools that teach Americans common sense skills, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, thanks to Kamala Harris, a lot of American children can't add 5 plus 5, but they can't tell you there are 87 genders. Well, Kamala, we'd like our schools to get back to common sense. We'd like our government to get back to common sense. And that's why we're going to fire Kamala Harris, send her back to San Francisco, where she belongs, and put common sense back in the White House. Now, I saw a statistic, and I want to take some questions from the media in a second. But I saw a statistic earlier today that I think bears repeating because it drives home just how radical Kamala Harris's policies are. Do you know that there are 13,000, I don't know, some of you are nodding because some of you saw this, 13,000 illegal immigrant murderers in the United States of America right now? They're in this country because Kamala Harris let them in this country. And in some ways, we have a question in this election. Do we have a president like Donald Trump who fights for America's citizens, who fights to keep people like Laken Riley safe? Or do we have Kamala Harris who fights to keep the people who took her life in this country? I think we have a choice, my friends, and it's Donald Trump, the president of American citizens, the president of American safety, and the president of American affordability. So let me just offer one final request, and then I'll take these questions from the press. I want you to do two things today. I want you to commit to doing two things. First of all, I want every single person in this room to get out there and vote 10 times. Now, our friends in the media are going to report, there'll be headline New York Times, J.D. Vance promotes voter fraud in Pennsylvania. Here's the way that we're going to vote legally 10 times. You're going to go to the polls and take 9 of your friends and family and make sure every single one of them votes. And here's the second thing I'd like for you to do. There's a website called swampthevote.com. Swampthevote.com. And here's what you can do on that website. You can check your registration, you can check where your polling booth is, and you can find some good information to make sure that you get out there and vote. Because here's the thing. We're never going to have the power of the corporate media behind us. These people have gotten way too rich on American decline. We're never going to have them telling the truth about Donald Trump or actually making Kamala Harris answer for her broken record. But you know what we do have on our side? We've got the power of the American people. So let's get out there and use it, and let's win Pennsylvania in November. God bless you guys. All right. We love you. We thank you guys. Let's take a few questions from the media. And what I'd ask is that we start with the local reporters first. If we've got time afterwards, we'll take some questions from the national folks.
Thank you very much, Senator. I've got 2 quick questions for you. First off, what are you going to do with the Affordable Care Act? Can you guarantee that it's not going to be dismantled until there is a plan in place? And what is going to be happening with people that work for the minimum wage in the state of Pennsylvania and the United States?
Yeah, so first of all, on the Affordable Care Act, Donald Trump has made very, very clear we do not want people dying in the streets in the greatest country in the world. We want to make sure Americans have the best health care, the best health care options, and of course we're going to protect people with pre-existing conditions. But the way that you do that is by promoting transparency. And Donald Trump, more than any president of my lifetime, you know what he did? He promoted transparency in our healthcare system, and he went to war with Big Pharma to lower costs for American citizens all over the country. And that's exactly what he's going to do again. And in fact, Donald Trump's record on healthcare was so good that the main thing Kamala Harris talks about is actually an achievement of Donald Trump's, which is getting insulin down to $35 a vial. Thank Donald Trump for that. Don't let Kamala Harris lie and take credit for it. And the question you asked about the minimum wage. Look, we want every American who works hard and plays by the rules to earn a good enough wage to support their families, put food on the table, and if, God willing, that's their dream, to buy an American home. That's what we want. Now, we ask ourselves, how is it that Donald Trump had the fastest growing economy, the fastest growing take-home pay, and inflation at 1.5% when he left office? And the answer is that Donald Trump gave American workers bargaining power. And how did he do that? Because he got control of that southern border. Kamala Harris has seen the decimation of American wages because she has let in millions upon millions of illegal aliens, and they're undercutting American wages. Donald Trump is going to say, you got to go back home. If you want to come in this country, you can come through the proper channels, but you send people home who've come here illegally, and that's how you raise American wages. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story, sir, just to illustrate this point. This was back in my private sector days. I was at a business dinner, and I happened to be seated next to one of the leaders of a very large American hotel chain. And he was just going on and on about how much he hated Donald Trump's immigration policies. And I said, well, explain to me, what is it that you hate so much about having a secure southern border? And the guy said, well, because I can't hire illegal immigrants who will work for cheaper, I've got to pay my American workers a higher wage. And I said, well, that's a good thing. Paying American workers a higher wage is exactly what we want out of American economic policy. But I think this illustrates why so much, and I think it's a mistake. I think corporate America ought to be pro-America, but so many business leaders have gotten behind Kamala Harris because she's pursuing an immigration policy that is flooding America with illegal aliens and undercutting the wages of American workers. We have got to cut that crap out and build an American economy for American citizens first. Next question.
Senator Linda Stein, Delaware Valley Journal. I was wondering, you and Donald Trump have promised us peace and prosperity. However, Israel is bombing Hezbollah now, and of course the war in Ukraine continues. What do you think is going on in the world? What will you do about it?
Well, ma'am, it's actually a very important question because you cited two wars that were started under Kamala Harris's weak leadership. And the way... So I have a very detailed plan for how we're going to bring peace and prosperity back to the world. It's 3 words: elect Donald Trump. That is the peace plan for the United States of America and for the world. But look, here's the issue. I've dealt with some of these world leaders. I've talked to them. Here's the problem. When you have weak American leadership and you have an American leader that nobody respects, you have wars breaking out all over the world. If Donald Trump was president, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. If Donald Trump was president, Hamas would have never attacked Israel. And so what we've got to do is just get back to common sense American deterrence. You've got to make the bad guys worry that if they do something screwed up, somebody is going to make them pay for it. That is exactly what Donald Trump did, and that's how we're going to get back to peace in the world. American deterrence, peace through strength. Next question.
Senator Vance, Ben Jacobs. President Trump told Axios in 2021 that Benjamin Netanyahu never wanted to make peace with the Palestinians. Do you agree with that statement, especially in light of the current state of the conflict?
Well, I think that what the president has said is that we want peace between Israel and the Palestinians, but the only way to get to peace is to destroy Hamas and let Israel finish the job. That's a very simple thing. Now, look, Ben, I don't know what the president said in 2021. I'm skeptical, of course, when somebody tells me what the president says, because half the time they're leaving out context or they're not actually telling me what he said. But more importantly, look, 2024 is not 2021, and we're in a totally new situation where we've got multiple major world conflicts in the Middle East and in Europe, and again, one threatening in Asia. So I think that what we have to remember here is that strong American leadership and importantly, smart American diplomacy is what keeps the peace. We're not going to have it with Kamala Harris. We don't have it right now. We will have it when we get back to the presidency of Donald J. Trump. And here's what's funny, my friends, is when you talk to like Democratic senators, and the cameras aren't on, what they'll tell you is that world leaders were afraid of Donald Trump. And they'll talk about that as if it was a bad thing. Okay? I happen to think it's a good thing for world leaders to not know exactly what to expect from a president. That's how you keep the peace. Next question.
Hi, Senator Vance. I'm Fallon Roth from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
That's all right. let's let her ask her question, and then we can boo afterwards if it's a ridiculous question. Go ahead.
This is your first stop in the Philly suburbs. Why did you choose Bucks County? And how can Republicans win back the suburbs in 2024 after President Trump lost in 2016 and 2020?
Well, I think there are a few things. First of all, look, we're going to make an argument to every Pennsylvanian. And I understand why you're asking the question, because you're looking at the demographics of politics, but I don't believe in this segmentation of urban, suburban, rural. We're all Americans, and Donald Trump and I are going to fight for every single vote. But look, if you look at the issues that really matter to folks here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, you hear the same things, whether it's in Bucks County or whether it's in a much more rural part of Pennsylvania or whether it's in downtown Philadelphia, where I have spent a lot of time. In all these places, you hear three big concerns. One is public safety, one is the cost of everything, and the third is the wide open southern border. And look, we've got the big difference between President Trump and Kamala Harris. There's so many things that we could point to, but I actually think the biggest difference in this campaign is that Kamala Harris is ashamed of her record and Donald Trump is proud of his, and rightfully so. Because when you let in 13,000 illegal immigrant murders, that's not just murderers that shouldn't be in our country. That's police officers that are dealing with those people instead of with problems that are a little bit closer to home. When you shoot inflation, when you shoot the price of groceries up by 25%, the price of housing up by 40%, you make it so that even the hardest working Americans cannot afford to live a good life in their own country. I mean, I really worry. Maybe the single problem I worry most about, other than the border, because we've got to get the border under control, is young people telling me that they cannot afford to buy a home. If you take millions and millions of young Americans who would like to start families, who would like to have children, and make the housing market so unaffordable for them that they don't feel like they can own the American dream, you're going to destroy this country. We've got to get housing prices back to a reasonable level, give Americans a stake in their own country. And I think that is one big difference from 2020, but it's one big difference from my entire life. Is my entire life, most Americans can afford to buy a home. Maybe not a fancy home, maybe not a giant home, but most Americans can afford to buy a home. I think it's something like 65% of our fellow citizens have no real prospect of owning a home in this country. It's a disgrace. It's because of Kamala Harris's policies, and Donald Trump and I are going to make American housing affordable for Americans again. Next question.
Peg Kwan for the Bucks County Herald. I met two groups of young men here today from universities, and they are concerned about the wars and possibly a draft being reinstated. What's your take on that, Senator?
Well, I think, look, my honest guidance to those young men, and I think their concerns are very legitimate. But if you're worried about the world spinning out of control, if you're worried about a military draft, if you're worried about, God forbid, a world war, the best way to prevent it is to vote for Donald Trump. And I really believe that. Look, ma'am, I think it's a totally reasonable question because we are as close to a large-scale conflict all over the world as we've been in my lifetime. And we've gotten here because we've had leadership that has been weak and leadership that has been very dumb when it comes to basic diplomacy. Now, we talked about Zelensky coming in here. Zelensky's gotten $200 billion. Donald Trump is the only person of either major American political party, the only person who has stood with Zelensky and said, yes, the Russians should not have invaded Ukraine, but the killing has to stop. We need an American president who stops the bloodshed and stops the carnage, and that is what Donald Trump had the courage to do. And I think if you're a young person, or whether you're the parent or the grandparent of a young person, we know that when the world goes to hell, it is America's sons and daughters that risk life and limb to put it back together again. So if we want, and I'm a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and I know we have a lot of veterans out there. Thank you for your service. But the most precious natural resource that we have, and we have a lot of them, but the most precious is the lives of our young people who are willing to put on a uniform and sacrifice for this country. It's an amazing thing that we got to cherish and we got to care for. And here's what bothers me so much about Kamala Harris's policies. It's not just that it's weak, and it's not just that it doesn't make any sense, but it's careless and incompetent. Because remember, Kamala Harris bragged about being the last person in the room when the decision about the Afghanistan withdrawal was made. And then that withdrawal happened, and 13 innocent Americans lost their lives, and nobody has been fired from it, and there's been no real investigation. That is a disgrace of Kamala Harris's leadership. And when Donald Trump is back in the White House, we are going to fight to investigate what exactly happened. We're going to fire those responsible, and we're going to protect Americans who put their lives on the line for this country. And I think we got time for one more question, and then I'll leave you with one final thought here, but one more question first.
Senator Vance, J.D. Mullane from the Bucks County Courier-Times.
It's a great name, my friend.
Yeah, you get a big head listening to these chants in here. This week there was a report, I believe from the Senate, showing that some 400,000 or more illegals have been released by ICE into the country with criminal records. The president has talked about mass deportations. What would those mass deportations look like in places like Bucks County, southeastern Pennsylvania? Certainly, if you're going to enlist local law enforcement, their lives are going to be put at risk. So what's the plan? What does it look like?
Well, I think the plan is you start with the most violent criminals, you arrest them and tell them to get the hell out of our country. I mean, that's about as simple as a plan as we could have. And sir, to be fair, you are absolutely right that this illegal immigration crisis has made life more dangerous, especially for our local law enforcement officials. But when I talk to local police, and of course we're proud to have the endorsement of pretty much every local police organization in the country, you know what they tell me? They tell me they would love to be empowered to do their job and to enforce the law and keep their communities safe. And that's exactly what President Trump and I are going to do. When we say back the blue, we mean a couple of things. First of all, we're going to back the blue in getting the pay and benefits they deserve. We're going to back the blue in thanking them every day for their service, and we're going to back the blue in empowering them to do their jobs and keep all of us safe. We're going to fight for them every single day because they fight for us. So, my friends, I have to hit the road now, and I'm going to come back. Trust me. We're going to be back a lot in the next 40 days because we love this state, and we're going to win this state, and we're going to win it because the people in this room. But let me just say that a lot of times when I come, I mean, pretty much every time I come and do an event, which is pretty much multiple times a day at this point, somebody will come up to me and they'll ask me how I'm doing. And it's the sweetest and kindest thing in the world. You have people who are worried about how they're going to afford their next meal, and they ask me how I'm doing. And that makes me feel really special. But most importantly, it makes me feel that we have a very special country filled with the best people in the world. We really do. And the answer is I'm doing great because I'm having the time of my life getting out here convincing people to vote for Donald J. Trump. But as we go about the business of winning this election for the next, I think it's only 38 days. As we go about that business, I'd like you to remind yourself every single day that we've got the best people, the most beautiful country, the most incredible natural resources. My friends, I really believe that we are ready to unleash a great American century of prosperity and freedom. But the one thing that is broken about this country is the failed leadership of Kamala Harris. Together, let's fire her and send Donald Trump back to the White House. God bless you guys. Thank you all so much.